appreciate all of you jumping on today for our Clever Girl Marketing presentation. Today we have Heather Drago from Clever Girl Marketing. As I said, she's the founder and chief strategist. She has worked for nonprofit organizations, small businesses, and marketing agencies in several capacities, notably as a system analyst and consultant, website and application developer, department manager, project manager, and strategist. As the principal of the company, Heather handles Clever Girl's day-to-day operations, leads strategy development, manages deployment, and is very often a hands-on member of project teams. So today, Heather is going to talk about why your website isn't working. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please do not hesitate to type your questions in the questions box or the chat box, and we will make sure that we get to those questions at the end. So I'm very happy to introduce Heather from Clever Girl Marketing.
So hi everybody, my name's Heather Drago and I am a marketing veteran of over 25 years, as Pam mentioned. Our company specializes in marketing audits and strategies, brand strategy and design, website strategy and development, SEO strategy and implementation, social media, content marketing campaigns, and more. You may notice that a common word throughout this slide is strategy, because we believe really good marketing begins with strategy. So today's presentation is going to cover, it's not a sales pitch and it's not going to be too technical, but it is going to throw a lot of information at you. So hopefully it will be helpful. And as Pam mentioned, I'd be happy to answer questions at the end. And I'd be also happy to email a PDF of this deck if that would be helpful to anyone, if you want to go back and look at anything. So we're going to cover what good websites do, what bad websites do, your two different audiences, what I hate about bad websites, website and SEO myths, how to plan a good website, and how COVID-19 has changed internet usage. So good websites are strategically optimized for search, so people can find you. They're well written. They have a job to do. I often ask people, you know, what is your website's job? Like a good, happy dog, a website has to have a job. They're focused on the customer. They meet people where they are, so they serve the customer, not necessarily the business owner. They serve the customer. And they help customers pre-qualify themselves or save you time by helping them unqualify themselves. Good websites are also mobile responsive, which means they're designed to display on all types of devices. We'll talk about that more. They're intuitive and easy to understand and navigate. They make it easy for customers to call you, email you, otherwise contact you and hire you. They immediately answer questions or help people solve their own problems. They nip problems in the bud, meaning customers know how to, you know, they get their questions answered, they have a way to contact you, you have some resources for them. And good websites pay attention to details, and that means things like custom 404 pages, social sharing tools, FAQ pages, you know, forms that are intuitive and give people feedback. They pay attention to details. By contrast, bad websites are just hard to find because they're not optimized for search. They have no strategy behind them. That's why they're a mess. Or sometimes they have too many things going on, and that's why they're a mess. They're poorly written, they're full of cliches or jargon, or they're full of buzzwords, and people don't know what to make of any of it. They assume visitors already know the brand. This is probably one of the biggest mistakes I see the most from small businesses is they leave out half the conversation. And so customers are left not understanding what they do or how they can help the customer. They don't answer people's questions, see above, and they're confusing and non-intuitive and hard to navigate. For example, this site here shown on this slide, if you take a look at this, it's almost all menus. There's menus and buttons at the top here. There's a menu across, there's another menu, there's another menu, there's another menu, there's a chat thing, there's a login. There's very little content other than this little bit right here. And it's, for an average consumer, they don't know where to start. Bad websites aren't mobile responsive, like the one shown here, which makes them really frustrating to use on mobile. They look outdated or are badly designed. They say too much or not enough, or what they have on them is irrelevant. They're focused inward, where people are talking all about themselves and they're not addressing the customer's needs. They're not current with the latest technologies, and they don't have a strong call to action, or they have too many calls to action. So let's talk about the halo effect. So your marketing materials or any other touch points that a customer or client may come in contact with says to that potential customer what they can expect from your service or your product. So for example, Apple, if you've had a really good experience with an Apple iPad, and then they come out and they sell a new phone or AirPods or some other, some super duper watch or something, since you've already had a good experience with the quality of the product, the quality of the packaging when it comes to you, the store you go to, it creates this halo effect that you then trust them and you know what to expect from them in the future. By contrast, the horn effect, which is this is like angel and devil on your shoulder. If someone comes into contact with your brand and they get a bad impression, whether it's from your marketing materials, the people who work for you, other touch points, then they're going to think you don't know what you're doing and they can't trust you. So that's why it's important for all of your marketing messages, materials, and especially your website to positively reflect your brand. And you can do that from the content all the way to the design. So a big part of making your website work is understanding that you have two very different but very important audiences, and you have to speak to both of them because one is the gatekeeper for the other. So the first audience are search engines, and I jokingly call them Google and the robot overlords, because every day, every hour, there are these bots that go out through the internet and they're indexing all the contents on the internet every day. They're just putting it in giant databases. And you have to tell them explicitly what your site is about in order for them to understand that when a human then says, I need a plumber in Lyndhurst, they find that content and show it to the human. And Google's main purpose is to give their users a good experience by showing them relevant content. So when someone searches for something, the results that are listed need to be relevant to their search. So you have to show Google that you're relevant. So you have to do a lot of the things we're going to talk about as we go through this. You have to do metadata, and you have to pay attention to your headlines, and you have to really pay attention to your content for them. And then that content also has to give clear indicators of why a customer should hire you. And one thing to really understand is that people make decisions based on emotion. So a lot of people approach their marketing as if people are all going to Consumer Reports and comparing washing machines, and they're looking at side-by-side comparisons of all the different ratings and capacity and features and all that stuff in order to make the decision. And sometimes you do that. You do that when you buy a car, you do that, when you buy a washing machine, for example. But you don't always do that for other services. Often you make a decision based on emotion. And the reason for that is the decision centers in your brain are based in the amygdala, which is the emotional center of your brain. So you have to, one, speak to the search engines so they know how to show your content to people. And then once you reach the people, you have to convince them to click, buy, or contact. So now we're going to get through common mistakes and pet peeves. And fair warning, memes ahead. There's a lot of content coming at you and it can get very dry and boring. So I tried to make this a little bit fun. So I hope you enjoy. So you're going to notice right away that, as I mentioned before, good marketing starts with good strategy. We're going to talk about some fundamentals that have nothing to do with the technical aspects of websites. We're going to talk about that stuff first and then work our way into the other stuff. So one of the biggest mistakes I see on a website is undefined goals. So again, what is your website's job? Your website is not just a digital storefront or an online brochure. Figure out what your website has to do to support your business goals. That could be anything from, we want to generate 10 contact page leads a week by month 3. It could be, we want to get a certain number of phone calls or an increase in membership or something like that. Decide what the key performance indicators, KPIs are, and other metrics that you're going to use to determine if your website is successful. Is it page views? Is it emails? Is it funneling people through your sales process? What is it? Define what that is, and then figure out what tools you're going to use to measure, like analytics and search console, your email system, whatever. Who are you? So you need a brand strategy. Very often, I have even big organizations say to me, just build me a website. You know who I am, just build me a website. Here's a brochure, here's my business card, this is what I do, just build me a website. And the problem is you can't just spin something out of thin air. You actually need to have a brand strategy. You need to know exactly how to speak about yourself, who you are, what you do. Everything needs to be consistent. You can't fake it. And the other thing to know is you can't be everything to all people. So you don't need to include everything just because a competitor might have a certain service or a certain thing they do. That doesn't mean you need to do that either. Understand who your core or best customers are, who you make the most profit from, and then write content to get more of them. Or if you're not a profit based organization, figure out what your membership needs, your customer, like clients, I guess is what we would say, need from you. Whether it's nonprofit health organization or something, what is it that you do best that gets people in the door, figure out what that stuff is and write about that. Writing the words are super important. But also, people spend too much time talking about themselves. It's all about our history, our founder, our company, our this, our that, our team, our process, our mission, our vision. People don't care. They don't care. They don't care about you at all. What they want to know is, can you help me? So you need to talk about the customer, the client. Help them see themselves being helped by you. Put yourself in their shoes, understand their pain points, think about their journey, what they need in order to contact you or to be convinced you can help. Walls of words. So sometimes people who like to write build a website and it's literally a wall of words. And you basically have 8 seconds to get people's attention. And if they encounter a wall of words, they're going to bounce. And bounce is actually an industry word, which it's used to talk about engagement. It's when someone hits your site, they look at it for a second, they're like, no, I don't like, this isn't it, no, and they leave. They literally hit it one page and they leave. That's called a bounce. And you want to have a low bounce rate in order to increase engagement and time on the page. Don't make people work hard to find things. So you want to make every headline count. You want to be clear and concise with your copy, and you want to break it into bite-sized portions. And really important, write as if you're speaking to an actual person. If you're writing content for a website, read it out loud, speak it to someone. If it doesn't sound authentic to you, you need to work on it. So the other big mistake people make is leaving out half the conversation. I mentioned that earlier, where they assume that, you know, we're Stanley Steamer, everybody knows what we do. And they don't really explain what they do, or they just drop in some buzzwords or some, you know, whatever. And people don't understand what they're saying. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean to me? That's not what I'm looking for. So you literally have to explain who you are and what you do from beginning to end, even if you think people already know. Be careful about too much jargon or buzzwords. Industry specific words and terms are fine if you know that your audience and understand those terms and they're looking for them. But if you use too many of them, you're either going to speak over people's heads or you're going to set off the BS detectors. So be careful of that. A lot of people, a lot of poser type websites just use a lot of jargon, and it makes them look inauthentic. Hierarchy. So hierarchy is important for a number of things. Remember the chunks of content we talked about? Well, you need to organize those chunks of content so that people understand that, you know, B goes under A, C goes under B. You know, what order do things go in? That's true in good visual design as well, just in general, just to make things pleasant and so people know how to read things. But search engines also need you to tell them what's most important, not just on the page, like this big headline, some text, slightly smaller headline, some text. It also applies to like your file structure. So if you have let's say you have a jewelry line, you know, you might have a category called products, and under products, you then would have a category called necklaces, and then you'd have each of the individual products. And then you might also have products and then rings and then all the individual products that are rings. And the reason you do that is for the bots, for the robot overlords, so that as they scan through your site, they understand the structure. So if you have, let's say, a team page that shows all the people on your team, and then you click on an individual's picture and then you go to a page about that individual, so let's say it's Bob Smith. So you say it would be like myurl.com/team/Bob Smith. So you want to make sure Google understands where things fit in order for it to structure things in listings better, to serve up the information people are looking for. Missing or broken or confusing navigation. I see this all the time. Don't get too cute. There's a reason there are conventions that we've all adopted where there's a menu bar across the top and it's 1 or 2 words, and people know what about means and people know what contact means. I've seen some websites get a little too cute where you absolutely have no idea what's going on. Keep navigation simple and consistent throughout your page. Show people where they are at any given time. So you can do that by having an active state, meaning the menu item turns a different color, or a hover state, meaning when you're hovering over it, something happens, like an underline. Breadcrumbs they show you where you are, and the site is like literally kind of like home, about, team, Bob Smith, like it tells you where you are. Not all sites have that, but they are very helpful. Basically, don't make things, I'm going to keep saying this, don't make things hard for people. As soon as you make things hard for people, they get frustrated and leave because someone else is doing it better. Busy, inconsistent, or outdated design. So, you know, this is just again, make it so it's, if you're thinking about your website like an online brochure, then like design it well. You know, are you using fonts and colors that are consistent with your brand throughout the site on every page? Is your website up to snuff? Does it meet today's design expectations? Be judicious about choosing what goes on every page. Don't put everything on every page. If you don't already, you should develop some brand standards for your brand, meaning these are the fonts we use, these are the colors we use, this is how we space things out, this is where we use this logo, where we use that logo. Have some some design specifications that you or your web developers can follow. Use high quality images, but make sure they're optimized for web. One of the big no-nos with SEO is slow page load times. And if you have really big, huge photos, that will slow down your site. So there are ways you can reduce the size or reduce the quality so that it still looks really good, but it's a smaller file size, so it loads quickly. And another big no-no is just really cheesy, obvious stock photos. Stock photos are great. You can do a lot with them, but try to get ones that aren't like the same, you know, business background, handshake, guy in a suit. Like try to get a little more original or creative than that. These days, people can take really good photos with their iPhones and then, you know, use apps to, you know, make them look good, brighten them up, and, you know, fix things. And often those are good enough. So better to have a good original photo than a bad stock photo. So mobile responsive, what does it mean? It means that the website resizes to whatever device the user is using at that moment. Design today assumes that 50% or more users will hit your site first on a phone or a tablet. So this is important because two things happen. Because search engines assume people may hit a website on mobile first, if your website isn't mobile responsive, they may not even list your site on those search result pages. So these days, website development platforms they build first for mobile and then scale up from there. So it's a paradigm shift that has happened since the iPhone, but it's, you know, pretty ubiquitous. And we're going to talk about statistics more, but one thing we do know is 60% of web traffic is coming from mobile devices. And that's been true since like 2016. So if your site's not mobile responsive, then you've got a problem. People are used to have a certain expectation of mobile experiences, and if your site isn't giving that to them, they will bounce, which we talked about earlier. Okay, so this is becoming more and more of an issue. People are becoming accessible. Approximately 2.2 billion people worldwide have some sort of vision impairment, and 1 in 5 people have some type of hearing loss. And this is not just a permanent 100% blind. There are lots of people who are severely visually impaired and they can function in life, but they need a site that, you know, is functional just like everyone else. My best friend, for example, and client is legally blind. She has 20% vision. And so I've actually used her sometimes as a tester for websites because, you know, it can be very difficult for someone to navigate. Modern website platforms often account for screen readers. Lots and lots of people are using screen readers on their websites. So, you know, just make sure you're thinking about that. You want to use alt image tags. Those were put in place to help the screen readers read the content on an image. It's also used for SEO, but it's not just for SEO. If you have videos on your website, make sure they have closed captioning. And here's one of the biggest mistakes I see. If you have a video on YouTube, you can, you know, it's really nice. You can upload your video. I think Vimeo has this as well. And even, I think Amazon does too. You can upload videos and it'll automatically caption for you. People go to that step and then they don't go back and read the captioning. And most of the time, there are hilarious and often very problematic mistakes in the automatic captioning. So go in, watch the video with the closed captioning, and then edit it. And there are tools right there in YouTube and all the other platforms, video storage platforms, that allow you to do that. Good user accessibility tools give users good experience. There are also plugins you can put, you can go the extra mile, but if you just do, you know, the basic things of, you know, closed captioning, alt image tags, good contrast, then you're in good shape. Another thing we're seeing now, a lot of websites have too little content. And it's, you know, they're trying to look cool and designy, but that can cause some problems. So one of the issues is Google wants to see between 300 and 2,000 words per page, and they want to see your SEO keywords, search engine optimization keywords, sprinkled throughout the page, ideally 2 or 3 times per 500 words. So if you don't have enough words on the page, then that's a problem. So it also doesn't help tell customers who you are and what you do all the time. And, you know, again, don't be too cute. Be explicit. Tell people who you are, what you do, and how they contact you, and, you know, what comes next. Okay, weak or missing calls to action. A lot of this is marketing fundamentals, right? But a lot of people forget this stuff on their website. They assume that if I tell people how great I am and look at all these things I've done and what I can do for them, they're just going to call me. There's my contact page. There's my phone numbers in the header. They'll call me. No, you need to tell them to call you. And if if you have a strong call to action, or you have some sort of exchange, like get a free consultation, or get this white paper, or get a free tool, whatever it is, they might be more likely to convert. Convert is when someone, you know, takes action, does the thing you want. So have a strong call to action. Don't assume they'll figure it out, and then sprinkle it throughout your site. And also try not to have too many calls to action. That can be even worse sometimes. Dead or dormant blogs. So this is very common. It's one of the saddest things in the world to hit a website and see they haven't updated their blog since 2012. And you know, a lot of blogs are started with the best of intentions, or people start a blog because everyone else has a blog and they think, well, I guess I should have a blog, and they don't understand why they need to have a blog. Blogs are great for driving traffic to websites. Since a lot of people are searching on Google and other platforms with questions, how do I fix my garbage disposal? Blog posts that outline those steps or have a video or whatever are great ways to get people to find your site and then see you as a trusted authority and come back to your site, okay? The problem is people don't have a plan for how they're going to keep them up to date. They don't have support. They're, you know, if you're like me, you're a busy self-employed business owner, like the blog is the last thing on your mind. I had one at one time on my site and I couldn't keep it up because I'm busy writing other people's blogs. So I turned mine off. I hid it. It's not serving me. It's not serving my clients. Why bother? So either if you're going to have a blog, commit to it, put resources in place and keep it going, or don't have one. So this one, surprisingly, is kind of common too, is people don't talk about how great they are sometimes, which seems really counterintuitive. But if you're a member of some industry groups, if you're a member of chamber, if you have an A+ accreditation on the Better Business Bureau, put a logo on there, show people. If you've won an award, tell people. If you have some testimonial quotes from people, put them on your site. If you have videos, put them on your site. If you don't, get some. Create case studies, demonstrate your expertise with a blog, but, you know, go back to the previous slide and keep it going. So there's a whole list here because this is very, very common. I see this every single day. There are websites that are not optimized for search still. And what does that mean? So you need to tell the robot overlords what your site is about. So you do that by using keywords. Keywords are the words or phrases, not just one word. It can be a whole sentence that people might search in a search bar, like in Google or Bing or whatever. So there are places in the back end of your website. If you, very common thing, people use like Yoast or other plugins for WordPress sites or other platforms. Things like Squarespace and Wix have some of these tools built in already, where they'll say, you know, what's the keyword for this page? Put that in there. Then you want to say what the page title is, and your keyword needs to be in that page title. And that is what's the big blue text that shows up in your search engine listings. And then you want to have a description, a customized description. That's the text that shows under the headline in Google about what your site is about. And you want to include that keyword in that description. You want to have alt image tags. So we've talked about the site being accessible. So let's say you have a picture of a kitten and you're a pet supply store. So your alt image tag should have something like, this happy kitten can be adopted at, and then our pet store, blah, blah, blah. And maybe pet store is the keyword. So you want to have a description that makes the image accessible to those with disabilities, but it also needs to include keywords to help Google find it in search. And then OG tags are your way of structuring data so that when people share your site on social media, or they send someone a link in a chat or something like that, they get that real nice pretty preview where it has an image and a headline and text. There are settings for that. If you ever are frustrated that you share a link to your website and it looks like garbage, it's because you haven't set your OG tags. So that stuff's really important. More and more people share stuff, you know, like in a text or in Messenger or whatever. You want to make sure that stuff's there. Metadata that you put on that back end, all that stuff I just talked about. Often people do all that, but they don't actually, the metadata doesn't match what's on the page. And that's a big no-no, big red flag for Google. So you want to make sure, like, if you're using a keyword, if you're using certain words or phrases in your metadata, that has to be in your headlines, it needs to be in your copy all the way through. If your site's not mobile responsive, it's not going to be optimized for search. I'm just going to keep saying it over and over. Your site has to be mobile responsive. Slow page load times, we talked about images, design your site for speed. There are tools sometimes in different platforms where you can minify scripts, or just make sure the coding is clean, your images are optimized, you don't have too many slow animations going on, things like that. A lot of people forget to get a Google My Business page, and that's a really important thing. You know, when you see a business and they're like on the map and you're not, and you're like, why am I not on the map? It's because they have a Google My Business page and you don't. So you need to put a Google My Business page in there. If you have multiple locations, you need to set up a page for every location to get you on the map. You need to put your hours in there, your phone number, link it to your website, link it to your social. There's a whole lot of other things in there you can do as well. You can do posts, that's where people can review you. There's all kinds of things you can do in there. And a lot of people either set it and forget it, don't do it in the first place, or don't make the most of it. So that is, you know, you're trying to get good rankings on Google. So use the Google My Business page, because that's one of the like top things that's going to help. But don't assume it will take care of everything. You've got to do all the other fundamental stuff too. It all weaves together. Okay, so here's some more pet peeves. I have a lot of them. So auto playing videos with the sound on. Don't do that. Do not do that. It's the first, people just, they'll either forget they have the tab open and your video starts playing and they're like, what the heck is going on? Then they just like scramble to close the tab, or they just bounce off your site, or they're just like, hello, 1996, what's going on? So just don't do that anymore. People can play the video if they want to. Same with music. Don't do that either. That's really old. Don't do that. Missing contact info. Weirdly common problem. Phone number should be right. If you want people to call you, phone number should be in the top right corner. Like, it should just be there. If it's not a good idea to put email addresses on websites anymore, because a lot of bots and like spammers and stuff scrape that stuff and then send you all kinds of garbage. But make it really easy for people to fill out a contact form that then emails you. Lots of pop-ups and interruptions. So we're all very familiar with like, this website uses cookies. Well, you kind of have to have that. That's okay. That can go off. But nothing is more annoying than when you go to a site and then a pop-up comes up and it's like, hey, get this free guide, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, thanks, click. And then I scroll down and then it comes up again, or there's an ad that pops up. People just get, there are so many good website experiences out there that if you keep frustrating or interrupting them, they're just going to leave your site and go find a better one. So don't do that anymore. Outdated technology. If there's something broken on your site or browsers don't support the technology anymore, get it off your site. Broken links or functionality. Every now and then, if you actually do external sites, check them. And if they're broken, remove them or fix them. So images with text. Browsers and social platforms can't read text flattened in image. So like all these memes you're looking at, the text is flattened into the image. So it's just a picture. Those web browser screen readers cannot read them. So that's why that alt image text is so important, right? Weirdly, there's a new technology going on with Google that we're reading about. I don't know how ubiquitous it is, but it's sort of a new thing where Google is using OCR, and it's so optical character reading, and it's reading text in images. So like if you search for a picture, let's say, or you search for something, Google's reading the text, like on all these memes, that's how I found them, and can pull them up. So that's kind of evolving, but it's still best practice to, if you're gonna have text showing over an image, just have an image as a background and then use your website tools to place text over the image. Don't flatten them into the image. Off-site search. If you ever get to a website where there's a search box and then you search on it like, I'm looking for dish towels or whatever, right? And you hit enter, and instead of showing you listings on that website, it takes you out to, it takes you out to Google for some reason. And sometimes it's filtering stuff on that website, but through Google, and it's just a very bad experience, and it's just bad. Don't do it. It's annoying, it confuses people, it frustrates people. Just don't do it. Most website platforms have some sort of search feature within them. Don't take people off your site. Missing social links. People just forget to put them on there, and you know, a lot of people are on social. We're going to talk about more about that. So make sure you know all the ways people can reach you or interact with you. You want to make those available. So put them in your header or in your footer or something. External links in the same window. I see this all the time. So websites have a link to, let's say, the Better Business Bureau, right? Great. Click the link and you're still in the same tab. Suddenly the website you were on is gone and now we're on the Better Business Bureau. Not that I don't like the Better Business Bureau, but what should happen is a new tab opens or a new window opens and then that's what you're presented with, and you still can go back to the other site. Don't take people out of your site. And then oddly enough, I see this a lot too. A lot of people, especially like DIY website builders, will use a template, which there's nothing wrong with that. We use templates too sometimes, especially like in Wix or Squarespace or whatever. And they like set up like a blog or an about page or something, but they just kind of like turn on the template and they fill out the homepage and then they don't go through and edit anything on those other pages. So it's obvious it's a template because it's just got placeholder copy or weird stock photos or whatever. If you do that, just hide those things, turn them off, and then as you complete them, turn them back on. If you leave it there, you just look silly. So don't do that. You look unprofessional. Okay, some website myths. I hear these all the time. So above the fold, a lot of people say, I want everything above the fold. When they first turn on my page, I want them to see all this stuff. Well, mobile phones have been a thing for a while now. People are very used to scrolling. In fact, probably the most modern looking websites now are sort of like one-page scrolling websites. So that's not really a thing anymore. And if you remember that one website I showed earlier with all the menu items, that's cramming everything up above the fold. Don't do that anymore. People don't read. Well, that's sort of true and sort of not. You have those 8 seconds to get people to lock onto something that they're looking for, right? So you don't want the wall of words. So what they do instead at first, in the first 8 to 10 seconds, is they scan your site, and it's sort of like in an F shape from the top to the bottom. They start, top left, scan right, and they come down and they go left to right, and then they kind of go down. If you break up your stuff in a way that's in small bite-sized pieces, there's good hierarchy, there's good headlines, you have some video, you have some photos, whatever, and it gets their attention, they will click, they will find the thing they're looking for, they will click, and then they will read more. So avoid the wall of words, but give them good content. If you build it, they will come. Nope. Every website needs to be promoted in some way. You need to either, yes, you do all the fundamental SEO things, but you need to either do some advertising, you need to do something in person, some signage, something. You need to do something to promote your site. Just because you have pretty good SEO doesn't mean you're going to get on page 1 of Google. Which takes us to the next thing. It takes time for results in search engine results pages to improve. So even if you have a website with no SEO and then you invest in having a whole bunch of SEO done, it's not going to improve on day 1. It's going to take a little time to build and get past your competition. And then the website is done thing. Websites are never done. It's not a set it and forget it. They're fluid and evolving, and you should be monitoring them and updating them and adding to them all the time. Okay, so with all that said, all the bad stuff and all the pet peeves, how do we build a good website? So these next 3 slides, I'm not gonna read all the script on them, and again, you can get the PDF of this later, but I want you to understand that there's a process to building a good website. It starts with strategy, and then there's some content development, and then there's the programming. So first you research and strategize. Find out who your competitors are, where you fit in the marketplace, where your competitors are showing up in results pages, what keywords you should use. Understand who your customers are. Again, this is basic marketing 101, right? Understand who your customers are, what their pain points are, what they're looking for, what you do well for them, what your existing customers love about you, that kind of stuff. And then establish the goals for your website. What do you want your website to do, and how is it going to help your business succeed or your organization succeed? So then you start to develop the stuff that's going to go on your website. Make sure your branding is solid. That means messages and visuals. Develop a content and design plan. What are your pages going to be? What's the site map? Literally, what's the architecture? What pages go where? What's going to be on each page? You can outline this stuff in Microsoft Word. It's not that hard. You just need to make a plan. And then once you have your plan, start developing copy and visuals. So make sure you go back to that strategy though when you're doing that SEO strategy and the keywords, just Google and stuff can help you figure out what keywords might be useful. And then when you write your headlines and your copy, make sure you keep that in mind. And as I mentioned earlier, make sure each page is about one thing. So this page is about this one thing, here's the keyword, and I'm including it in the headlines and copy and the metadata. Then you build the site, and you don't have to build the whole thing. You don't have to build 20 whole pages and then launch. You can start with a home page and a contact page, and then as you build pages, turn them on, right? So just get the work from prioritize what has to get done and work down the priority list. Optimize the site for search on and off. So there's all the on-site stuff we talked about, and then you hook it up to analytics and Search Console to measure all that stuff. But there's other stuff too that you can do that's off-site, like building external links, putting yourself on local business directories, networking with partners or different analogous businesses. For example, if you're a wedding photographer, maybe you work with caterers and venues and stuff to get them to put links on their sites to your site, things like that. It's an ongoing process. You can't do it all at once, but it's something that helps your site tremendously. And then monitor and update the site regularly so that you know how it's going and how are your search rankings and is anything broken. Okay. So Pam asked me to briefly talk about how COVID is changing online behaviors. So I'll go through some of these. There's some interesting things in here. Some things I've seen anecdotally with my clients' websites. Some things surprised me. So it's not too surprising that internet usage is up because everyone's, having to do everything remotely. So 60% of the world's population is online. 50 to 70% surge in global internet hits, which is pretty high. People go on, this is of course not surprising. People are going online to connect with family and friends because people are isolated. They're looking for news and entertainment because there's a lot going on. And they're looking for things to do or buy, which isn't that much of a change. In the US, in-home data usage is up by 18%. Over 92% of people report using their mobile devices some of the time, at least some of the time. The increase in e-commerce surprised me. It wasn't higher, but that's where we are. And the interesting thing is people are moving back to larger screens. So all that mobile stuff is still really, really important, but because people are online so much and they're streaming entertainment and doing stuff like that, they're using their laptops. Also, it's probably because they're working at home and they're like flipping between work and stuff they shouldn't be doing, like Facebook. And okay, let's keep going. And then, so streaming is way up, including not just videos and like Netflix and stuff like that, but gaming platforms like Twitch are way up. And a lot of people are watching more videos on YouTube. YouTube is a big entertainment source, especially for younger people. So that's a big opportunity. If you're someone who can pay for some video ads on YouTube, now's the time to do it. Average time spent online per user per day is almost 7 hours. And interesting to me, long established trusted news sites have gone way up, while partisan sites on either side are kind of flat. Okay, so social media has surged. And again, this I think has to do with people feeling disconnected and wanting to connect with friends and family. So it's actually growing faster now than it was before the pandemic. And the other interesting thing, this is the thing that really surprised me, is search behaviors are changing a little bit. So because so many more people are on social media more often, people are searching in social media and other platforms. Amazon's a giant search engine, obviously, but people are doing research on products on Amazon and then they go buy them elsewhere. The other thing it seems to be happening is the younger people are, the more likely they're going to search on social. So if you're debating, do I do Google ads versus Facebook or Instagram or some other ads, depending on who your customers are, one might be better than the other. Okay, so I just threw a ton of stuff at you all. Some things I try to calm people down with regularly is don't get overwhelmed. You don't have to do everything at once. Your site doesn't have to be perfect at once. A lot of times people are paralyzed by perfectionism and they don't even know where to start, and then the site never gets done, and 5 years later they still don't have a site. A little bit is better than nothing. And so just, if you see your site is having problems, just make a list and work your way through the list. So, progress over perfection. Think strategically and put yourself in the shoes of your customer. Also, I forgot to mention, for all the statistics about the COVID internet usage, at the end of this presentation, I also have a list of sources for that, and I'd be happy to share those with anyone if you want to delve deeper into any of those articles.
Thank you so much, Heather, this was great information. And I know I told you earlier, but even if you have someone who is running your website for you, this is great information so that you're knowledgeable and that you know what to talk about with who you're working with and how you can communicate how you want your website to function and look. So I think this is really great information for businesses. So thank you so much.
Very welcome.
And yes, thank you. Thank you to all our accredited businesses, and please keep a lookout on your emails for our next upcoming webinars. Thanks everyone and have a great day.